My name is Jonathan, and until recently, I was a skeptical journalist known for debunking supernatural stories. I always believed that fear was merely the product of an overactive imagination or ignorance. That was until I accepted an assignment that took me to a small town in Louisiana, a remote place surrounded by swamps and steeped in a suffocating atmosphere. My objective was to investigate the supposed curse of a local family, the Duvalls, who, according to rumors, had fallen victim to a voodoo ritual. I arrived in the town at sunset, as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky a blood-red hue. The sticky humidity clung to me like a second skin as I walked down the main dirt road, flanked by ramshackle houses. The few townspeople I encountered deliberately avoided me when I mentioned the name Duval. Their eyes, evasive and filled with something I could only describe as reverential fear, unsettled me. But I was a man of science, an investigator. There was nothing to fear, or so I thought. That night, I stayed at an old boarding house that smelled of mold and rotting wood. The owner, an elderly woman named Clara, finally agreed to tell me about the Duvalls. She explained that the family had ruled the town with an iron fist decades ago. They were wealthy, influential, and ruthless. It was said that those who disobeyed them mysteriously lost their crops or fell gravely ill. Everything changed when Marie, a young maid who worked for them, suffered a personal tragedy. Marie was a single mother who relied on her job at the mansion to support her newborn son. One day, while she was busy cleaning the basement, she heard the heart-wrenching screams of her child from upstairs. When she arrived, she found the baby cold and lifeless in his crib. According to Marie, the Duvalls had ignored her desperate pleas for help and had forbidden anyone from calling a doctor, concerned only with maintaining appearances. To her, their negligence was the cause of her son's death. Desperate and filled with rage, Marie turned to Mama Odette, a voodoo priestess who lived deep in the swamp. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper when she mentioned the name, as if simply uttering it could summon the woman. They say Mama Odette cursed them. The Duvalls died one by one, each death more gruesome than the last. Now their house is abandoned, but no one dares go near it. Some say you can still hear their screams. Clara crossed herself and refused to say more. The next day, armed with my recorder, I decided to visit the old Duval mansion. It stood at the edge of the swamp, partially overgrown with vines and shrouded in an unsettling silence. The air reeked of decay, as if something was rotting. I pushed open the front door, which groaned loudly as it swung inward. The interior was in ruins. Wallpaper hung in tatters, the floor creaked beneath my feet, and dust covered every surface. However, what truly chilled me were the markings on the walls, strange symbols and words in an unrecognizable language. Seemingly screaming desperation, at the end of a hallway, I found an improvised altar, melted candles, black feathers, and a crude wooden effigy emanating an aura of unease. Suddenly, the air grew heavier, as if the house itself were breathing with me inside it. A shiver ran down my spine when I heard a whisper, low and guttural, that I couldn't place. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. My rational mind tried to assert itself. It was just the wind. But there was no wind. The first night after my visit, I woke abruptly at the boarding house. I had a horrifying dream. Mama Odette, her face covered by a mask of bones, stared at me intently while muttering incomprehensible words. In my hands, I held a small wax figure that I recognized as myself. I woke drenched in sweat, my room freezing cold despite the oppressive summer heat. From that moment, strange things began to happen. I heard footsteps in my room when no one was there. Mirrors reflected shadows that shouldn't exist, and an unshakable feeling of being watched followed me everywhere. One morning, I found a carved wooden figure identical to the one in the Duval house on my nightstand. I had no idea how it got there. I tried to leave the town, but my car wouldn't start. When I checked the engine, I found something wrapped in dirty cloth, feathers, bones, and human hair. Desperation took hold of me. Clara, seeing me, whispered, "You've angered her too." She told me the only way to break the cycle was to find Mama Odette and beg for forgiveness. That night, flashlight in hand, I ventured into the swamp. The tree's branches seemed to stretch like claws, and the sounds of unseen creatures made me doubt every step. Finally, I reached a decrepit cabin. Mama Odette's house was a structure made of aged wood, almost black, as if consumed by years of timidity and decay. The walls were adorned with carved symbols, some simple, others intricately detailed, that seemed to shift under the pale moonlight. An improvised atrium was filled with illogical objects, necklaces made of human bones, animal skulls, and ragdolls pinned with rusty needles. The air reeked of incense, burnt meat, and something metallic, perhaps dried blood. Inside, the space felt larger than it should have been. Shelves were lined with jars containing dark liquids, twisted roots, and unidentifiable body parts. A black cauldron bubbled at the center, though no fire burned beneath it, and its contents emitted a faint greenish glow. Above the fireplace hung a massive oval mirror, its surface smeared with something like grease or wax, reflecting images that didn't match the room. The central altar was a macabre masterpiece. It held carved figures with agonized expressions, surrounded by black candles whose flickers seemed to obey a will of their own. At the center was a human-shaped wax figure, about a foot tall, bound with red thread. Beside it lay a ceremonial knife with a wooden handle and an obsidian blade. The entire cabin seemed to vibrate with heavy, oppressive energy, as if it were alive. The door opened before I could knock, and there she was, a hunched figure with glowing eyes piercing the darkness. Mama Odette said nothing, only raised a hand, and I felt as though my body were being crushed from within. Everything went black. When I awoke, I was at the swamp's edge, with unexplained marks on my skin. My car worked, and I fled. Now I'm home, but something follows me. I hear whispers at night, and the wooden figure reappears. No matter how many times I burn it, I fear what I've unleashed will never stop. Desperate, I sought out paranormal experts, but none could offer real help. Sacred objects and prayers seemed useless, as if the curse were immune to human intervention. In a last-ditch effort, I returned to the town, searching for answers where it all began. Clara was clear. She's not done with you because you don't understand. The Duvalls' deaths were just the beginning. Mama Odette doesn't punish without reason. She takes what's necessary to restore balance. Balance, I thought, confused. What does that mean? Clara only gave me one direction, a hill on the other side of the swamp, a place where Mama Odette was said to have buried something. That night, with the full moon lighting my path, I set out. I wasn't alone. I felt it in every shadow, every crunch of dry leaves underfoot. When I reached the hill, I found a circle of stones. At its center lay an unmarked grave, covered in freshly turned earth. A voice emerged from the darkness, deep and resonant. The price has not yet been paid. It was Mama Odette. Her figure appeared from the shadows, surrounded by an aura that made the air tremble. The child was innocent, but someone else must pay, she said, pointing a bony finger at me. The ground beneath my feet began to quake, and the stones rose, floating like feathers. Then I understood. It wasn't just a curse. It was a sentence. I fell to my knees, begging for a chance, any way to redeem myself. But Mama Odette only smiled, her eyes like bottomless pits. Your regret comes too late, Jonathan, she murmured. The cycle cannot be broken. The last thing I remember is the sound of the earth opening beneath me and a darkness that consumed everything. Now I'm here, trapped, writing this as a final warning. If you ever hear of the Duvalls or Mama Odette, don't follow the trail. Some secrets are meant to stay buried forever.